Hi and welcome to Sparkle Tart.
You're listening to Kate Palmer, and today I'm going to show you how to change the colour of a leather planner. I have a lovely aquamarine heart of gold Marion Smith planner, and I'm going to try changing the colour of this with some Angelus gift box blue, and this is leather paint, it's proper leather paint. And I'm going to finish it with the Angelus matte acrylic finisher just to help protect the surface. Now, my Marion Smith planner is brand spanking new. There is nothing wrong with it. It didn't even have fingerprints until I picked it up. So why am I changing the colour? Well, I ended up with two through an accident of ordering, and I figured, let me see if I could turn this one from a pretty jadey colour green into one of my favourite colours, which is a Tiffany's blue, or in Angelus paint terms, gift box blue. Now, as you can see, the colour of the planner is not a lot different to the colour of the paint, so I'm hoping I'm going to get a beautiful result. Now, I'm going to have baby wipes on hand because at some point I will get paint on this white section and I'm just going to need to wipe it off. So I've got those ready as well. Now, I'm going to need to do a few coats to colour this, and I'll need to do the front and then come back and do the inside once the front's dry. So this will take a little while. Now, I'm going to start with this section here, the back and the front. As you can see, I've just laid it flat. Now, the areas that are going to cause me the most problems are the beautiful little Marion Smith logo down here. I'll have to try and get a really tiny paintbrush and paint around that. Perhaps something like this, really fine. And of course the press stud here. Let's get painting. Baby wipe at the ready. Now, following the instructions, I've given the bottle a good shake and a good stir to make sure that the colour is evenly distributed. Now I'm going to use my wide angled brush to apply the paint. I'm painting on a very thin layer for this first coat. You don't want any brush marks or ridges or odd blobs of paint because these will stay on your planner. So add a very thin coat of paint and make sure you've really worked it into the surface so that it is beautiful and as even as you can make it with this first coat. You may see a few streaks, you may see the background peeking through, it might look a little scrappy. Don't worry, it won't stay this way. Go slowly and make sure you've got a beautiful first layer to put your further coats onto. Swap to a small fine detail brush to paint around the gold embossed logo. Now, because this is embossed, it's actually a lot easier than I was expecting it to be, and I can paint just right up to the embossed edging and keep that gold nice and clean. Now it's time to swap back to your larger brush and finish painting the front of the planner cover. Now, if you see any paint or brush marks, just simply paint in the opposite direction. So if you had been going up and down, go horizontally, just to remove any of those marks and keep on going. Now, this is only the bottom layer. You will see some of the background peeking through. Now, as I'm working on this front section, the back part of the planner that I have already covered with paint is beginning to dry. Now, I don't know if this is because the paint just dries really quickly or if it's because I'm adding such a thin layer, but it's drying really well. Even so, I'm going to leave it about an hour or two between coats just to make sure it's completely dry before adding the next layer. Carefully paint around that little press stud closure and finish off the planner. When you've painted the entire front cover, just have a quick look and see if any paint has snuck over onto that white leather on the inside. If it has, grab a baby wipe and just wipe it off while the paint is still damp. Now, just so you can see the difference, I've left this little piece here uncoloured for the moment, and you can see the difference between what it's calling gift box blue and the aquamarine green colour. So the first coat's finished, and as expected, it is a little bit streaky, but really, the coverage is beautiful. I'm really loving the colour. Now you can see the difference here between the green and the now dry Tiffany's, well, I call it Tiffany's blue, they call it gift box blue, but it's going to be perfect. I love it already. Now, the second coat is where you really get the majority of your colour laid down. But again, don't go too thickly. Keep it thin layers, keep it even layers, so make sure you don't get any weird streaks or paintbrush marks or thick fat bits of paint. You want to keep it as thin and as even as possible. Now again, there's no particular special technique, just use the wider paintbrush to add the majority of paint to the planner, and use the fine detail brush to add the paint around the press stud and the gold embossed logo. Allow this to dry before going in with your third coat, which is the finishing and final layer, and the third coat should cover any little streaks, any little variations in colour. But as you can see, even now, it's looking absolutely gorgeous. Now the only thing I should say during this second layer is that you will see some streaky looking paint. Now this streaky look goes away as the paint dries, so don't worry too much. As long as you don't have huge thick blobs of paint, you get a beautiful even coat like you can see on the back here. So during the second layer, the paint will look a little streaky while it's still wet. Don't worry too much. Now it's time to add the third and final layer. Keeping in mind I've allowed the paint to dry for at least a good hour between each coat, just to make sure. Now this third layer needs to be just as thin as the previous two so that you get a beautiful finished result. You'll find that this third layer goes much quicker and doesn't take as much paint as the previous two. Now off camera, so that you guys didn't get bored completely to death, I've painted the inside aquamarine bits in the same gift box blue. Now I was a tiny bit scrappy on this embossed design because it wasn't as deeply embossed as the one on the front cover. So apart from that, which is my only little blemish, the rest of it's looking completely fabulous. Now for the inside, the only thing I did to keep the background looking absolutely beautiful was slide a piece of scrap paper or cardboard underneath the little flaps so that I could just paint without having to worry about getting any paint on the beautiful gold and cream lining, and it worked wonderfully. I cleaned any little extra bits off with a baby wipe and it looks practically perfect. Now the final step to keep it looking good is to apply the acrylic finisher. Now this is just sort of a clear surfacing agent, and I'm hoping it keeps my colour beautiful for years to come. Now it says apply with a soft cloth, so I'm just using a soft paper towel to apply this over the surface, both the outside and the inside. Anywhere where I've added that beautiful gift box blue paint, I'm coating with this acrylic finisher just to make sure it stays looking amazing. There's no special technique, it just says wipe on, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. And this is the finished result of my planner painting experiment. Now, these were both the same colour. You can see this one is the original aquamarine green from Marion, and this is my repainted version using Angelus leather paint in gift box blue. Now, it is beautiful. I've actually waited about 6 months between filming the painting and completing this video because I wanted to make sure that the painting was actually a good idea before I told you guys about it. Now, there's only a few tiny little things that you need to know about this. Number one, it doesn't feel quite the same as the original. So this is smooth and you can just run your fingers over it. This one's, it's not tacky, but it's not as smooth, if that makes any sense. So this one, there's a bit more drag when you run your hands across it. Also, when you pick it up, it's not tacky at all, but your fingers tend to hear that noise when you're on this. So it's just got a little bit more grab on the paint than it does on the vegan leather. Let me stress, this is not tacky at all. It doesn't feel weird or strange. It just feels a little different. Now, the Marion original planner is vegan leather, so it's a non-animal based product to begin with. I've heard that this paint works even better over actual leather than it does on what I've used. So you'll get even better results. Now, as you can see, if you hold it in the right light, you can see some tiny variations in the colour. Ever so slight. I mean, you really have to look hard in the right or wrong light, but it's still a beautiful, beautiful finish. Now, it's remained even all over. it wears the same as leather, so it gets little dints where you've sat it against something. I've had this in and out of my planner shelf and the paint has not rubbed off. The only two tiny blemishes I've got, you're not going to be able to see them at all. I could point to it and you would never even know that it was there. There's two microscopic spots where I think I probably didn't put enough of the acrylic finisher on the top, and the paint hasn't lifted, but it's just got a little mark. Now it could also be fluff or cat fur in my craft room. Any of those things are possible. So there is a tiny little, very small blemish, nothing to do with the paint. That's all me. The inside is holding up just as well as the outside. I've put a little metal clip on here, which was probably a bad plan, which has marked the leather, but hasn't taken the paint off, and that's just from having it sitting on there and being squashed. So it's wearing really, really well. There's no flaking, there's no transfer of colour. It is still soft and supple, and you can bend it without getting any cracks in the paint, which is fantastic. Kind of not what I was expecting, to be honest. I wasn't expecting it to wear as brilliantly as it has. There are no cracks, there are no little bits where the paint is flaking away. It is completely perfect. So I'm happy to recommend Angelus leather paint to repaint both vegan and regular leather planners because it looks amazing. Now in the next clip I'll show you the other way to recolor your planner, which is using leather dye. So this is leather paint, and in the next clip I'll show you how to use leather dye.
If you enjoyed this video, I'd love you to give me a like, and if you'd like to see more from Sparkle Tart, subscribe to my YouTube channel. There's a product list below the video in the description, and you can connect with me via YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, or Google+. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!